Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we're going to go over my December forecast so you can get an idea of what may be coming and plan ahead. But first, let's take you back of, well, November unfolded, and this is your overall temperature mean anomalies. You can definitely see in the graph on the right-hand corner of the screen, we were overall about 2 degrees below average across the nation, with slightly above average temperatures across our eastern states, but slightly below average across the central regions, but kind of well below average in our western states. And looking at the precipitation overall, we had some fairly decent rains, of course, especially along the North Pacific coast there, getting into California, definitely some beneficial rains in the Intermountain West. Most of this was in the form of snow. But once you got to our central states, yeah, there were definitely some bigger healthy rains in Texas and Oklahoma and across the deep south into the southeast and up into the Ohio Valley, up into the Northeast. So yeah, we definitely needed some good, decent rains in November, as 80% across the country was kind of abnormally dry as we've been dealing with this drought. So we did have definitely some much needed help in November. But where are we going to go in December? So let's take a look at kind of break this thing down for you week by week. And this is the overall temperature anomalies on the North American view. So for the most part, we're going to have a ridge going to be building across our southern states. And overall, we are going to get some of those cold fronts, but overall, we should start to see kind of slightly above average temperatures, where a lot of the cold air is going to be locked up well to the north, and especially up in Canada and Western Canada and British Columbia, but definitely some much colder air going to be filtering in into the Pacific Northwest and along the West Coast, where we are going to be seeing the beginning stages of a ridging starting to develop in Alaska with above average temperatures, as well as into Greenland. And that's going to be fairly significant as we go deeper into December. But as far as the precipitation is concerned, we're going to have a pretty good swath across the Tennessee Valley of definitely some heavier rains overall for the next 7 days, as our southern jet stream will continue to remain active. And yes, we do have more healthy rains coming back for the West Coast, and back into California. The Intermountain West, again, gets some decent precipitation. We do have kind of a dry slot in the middle of the country, but overall up into the Ohio Valley, getting up into the Northeast, we've got overall about 1 to 3 inches on average coming for the week ahead. But overall, looking at the snowfall aspect for the next 7 days, with that cold air predominantly in place, we're going to have some pretty good healthy snows across the Intermountain West. Even some of the lower elevations are going to be picking up some snows along the coastlines here, but especially into the Sierra Nevadas, into the Cascades, we're talking feet of snow, as the snow line will push well to the north, back into the Dakotas, back into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and portions of Michigan, and far extreme portions of New England, but getting into Canada. That will be over the next 7 days. But beyond that, things definitely start to get interesting, because we start to go head north and look at the teleconnections, and something significant of what's going to unfold in the month of December is this significant drop in the NAO, which is your North Atlantic oscillation. You can actually see this is a -2 sigma. Now the determined factor is that's going to be about a 12-year low. I mean, it's going to be a pretty significant drop in the NAO. In fact, this has only happened 5 times before, dating back to history. So it could actually make it kind of a December to remember, because this is going to stay predominantly negative pretty much for the entire month of December. So that's going to put pressure on that polar vortex, and eventually going to cause it to buckle and break, and it's going to cause it to disrupt, and it's going to send all the colder air from the stratosphere through the mid latitudes, and it's going to be a step down process. But I do feel it's going to get colder further south the deeper you get into December. And the Arctic oscillation as well, that actually turns predominantly negative as well, pretty much for the entire month of December. So we got some pretty good colder teleconnections telling us, hey, we got cold air pressing from the Arctic through Canada. We've got a fairly healthy snowpack in place, and that should send the colder air deeper further south as we get deeper into the month of December. As well as the PNA, this is your Pacific North American here. It's predominantly negative. So right now we've got, below average temperatures and a good chunk along the west, but we do actually see as it's kind of creeping towards the neutral line as we get deeper into the kind of the middle of December. So that will over time develop a little bit of a ridge as we get deeper into the month of December off into the west. Not much, but it are subtle signs that we could start to see the PNA start to come a little bit positive as we get into the second half of December. So let's really break this thing down for you. Here's the significant part is right when we get to about the 7th, so the end of this week, around the 7th of December, we're going to have that significant -2 sigma, deviation on the North American oscillation here, with that blocking over Greenland as well as portions of getting into Alaska. We've got that troughing underneath, the ridge underneath, so eventually that's going to put pressure. See how thin this is? So I think by the 8th, that's when we're going to have the polar vortex disruption do take place, and it's going to be a step down process with the pull of those Arctic oscillations and the negative oscillations turning negative pretty much for the entire month. That's going to send impulses of colder air filtering in from our northern regions all the way eventually into the deep south. So, but it's going to be a pretty significant storm track. I think our first significant storm track out of this, because what they call northwest flow is really going to be starting to take shape as this blocking kind of sets up over Greenland, over in Alaska here. That's going to set up a fairly significant trough over the Ohio Valley. You can actually see the 540 line digging all the way back into Tennessee by then. That could be, we're going to be setting our eyes on first a fairly decent heavy snowfall across the Northeast. This is a pretty good setup, so I'm going to be eyeing this time frame around the 11th or say the 12th of the month of December. But it's going to be cold, right? So here's your second week of December. It is going to be a step down process. You got blocking to the north. Now we don't have the ridge. It slowly breaks down. So this is from the 8th through the 15th. This is the second week of December. You can see the colder anomalies with the negative PNA out west. We got, much below average further to the north, but it starts to press a little bit further south as we get into the second week of December. And at the same time, we're going to have another active southern oscillation storm track with the southern jet stream getting active. So we're probably looking at some chillier rains for the deep south down into Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas back into Louisiana, and with some heavier rains really filtering in. This area right here could pick up some really significant rains really in the first half of December, because I'm looking at a lot of anomalies here showing well above average precipitation across the Tennessee Valley through Kentucky and portions of West Virginia here. So, but as we get deeper into the month, right, this is your third week, we're going to have a continued press down of the colder air coming in from the north, and then it's going to be again another step down process. We still got the blocking over the top, so we see actually another signal of a fairly decent active storm track coming through around the 19th of the month. So you could get one around the 11th or the 12th, and we could get another one across the Ohio Valley, up the eastern seaboard through the mid-Atlantic. So we'll be watching this type of storm track as well, as that colder air will continue to press a little bit further south. So yes, as we get into the third week of December, you can definitely see the cold air really starting to press now. The southeast ridge is goodbye by then. So I do feel you're going to start really feeling the effects of that polar vortex disruption. We can start to see the little bit hints of some of that neutral PNA starting to come back along the west coast. So you're not deeper in the cold. You're still on the chillier side, but not as cold, as you're still going to have that continued northwest flow with the coldest anomalies up into our upper Midwest regions in the middle of the country, and that will pull further south. So you can definitely see by the greens here, all the colder temperatures will be elongated across our central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S., while that blocking is over the top in Alaska, up in Greenland. That sets the stage for all the colder air to get locked up underneath And here's the snow. So I think the snow, don't take this verbatim as far as amounts goes. It just kind of gives you an idea of where maybe the storm tracks could be. And again, this pulls a little bit further south. So through the 19th, around the 19th of the month, that third week, I do feel the storm tracks is going to be digging a little bit further south. We're probably talking the Texas Panhandle by then. We're probably talking some snow in Oklahoma by then, portions of Arkansas, getting through Tennessee and back through the Carolinas again. At least you have opportunities with that storm track as it continues to push a little bit further south. And that will be the third week of December. But going in Christmas week, everybody wants to know, hey, what's happening for Christmas, right? So this is kind of your last week. And it even gets more interesting. You got cold air continuing to press, from the north. You got a jet stream that continues to buckle a little bit further south as well. So that's fairly significant, because all you got to do is time up the Arctic air and the precipitation at the same time, because the cold air is continuing to press. We're talking, this is the last week of December through the 25th, through the first part of January. So that last week of December, we're definitely looking at some very colder temperatures, those colder anomalies, with the coldest anomalies across the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and up the Northeast. But you can definitely see that cold air presses all the way to the coastline, guys. So much of the U.S. should be below average temperatures by the time we get into that last week of December. And this is the rain, so this is going to be fairly significant as well. So as that storm track really starts to dig, right, so it gets a little bit lower as the weeks go on. By the time the last week kicks in, we're still going to have, as it lifts up, we're going to have a little bit heavier precipitation across the south and the southeast, up the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. So that's going to be fairly significant with that storm track. So we'll have to be watching this, and we're already seeing some hints, at least as that storm track gets a little bit further, we could be pulling at least the snow opportunities a little bit further south as well. So we're seeing a lot of indications where we could be looking at least an opportunity, or at least a chance of at least some snow back further all the way down into the deep south. By then, with that active storm track would follow all the way down and then come up through kind of take this route right here. So that's going to be a fairly significant week that we'll really have to keep our eye on, because of course a lot of people are going to be traveling in that last week as well. But you do have some snow opportunities, I feel, in that last week of December further south. So, and even on the EPS guidance kind of hints the same way. That was the GFS. This is the EPS guidance, which is your European ensembles, hinting at that storm track pulling much further south, at least allowing opportunities for much further southern snows. And there's the overall temperatures, right? So if you combine the 30 days, so I think you do start warmer on the warmer side for a good chunk of the south and the southeast with that southeast ridge. But eventually that's going to start breaking down the second week and really start breaking down and say goodbye by the third week. So if you add it all up, I think for the most part, you're still going to be ending below average temperatures for a good chunk of the south and the southeast, with the coldest anomalies further north, because you'll be locked in the colder air much longer. So you have the northwest flow, right? So you have these, this is going to be a fairly active storm track. As these come across, you'll have the much above average temperatures going to be locked over a good chunk of the month of December across our northern regions. That's going to keep the cold air kind of locked in place for a good chunk of December as well. So, but here's your precipitation. So I am expecting a fairly amount of decent precipitation. So I am expecting some active storm tracks with good snow amounts, and even some flooding rains probably across the Tennessee Valley, and at least some opportunities for some snow across the deep south as well. So I'm expecting a fairly healthier, as far as the precipitation front for the month of December. So let's look at the snow, right? So combine all the snow over the next 30 days. Here's the GFS extended, kind of hinting. Don't take these snow amounts right now kind of verbatim, but it's going to be pretty active along the west. Intermountain snows are going to be really heavy, heavier amounts as you get further north, but at least you're going to have opportunities as you get further south across the Tennessee Valley, and of course across the deep south, at least some opportunities for precipitation chances. And obviously, yes, we'll have to watch for some icing events along this corridor there, as well as we'll be watching that battle zone take place. Here's the EPS kind of hinting at the same guidance, right? So all the indications on the global guidance has a step down process of the cold the deeper we get into December. And so if you add it all up, we'll have some fairly heavy, healthy snows, some huge snows at times, and even some southern snows at times, I think, as well, especially as you get into the second half of December. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.